Thanks, Sam. The other thing we have in common is we love cheese. And we have this WhatsApp group, and we have he's the king of the cheesy jokes, but anyway. So, 20 years, 20 minutes to talk about 20 years plus of my life. Doing all we can to protect and conserve painted dogs, painted wolves, African wild dogs, Cape hunting dogs. It's all one and the same thing. They've got so many names. Really doesn't make an awful lot of sense for a species that so few people actually know and certainly understand. Just to put some context into everything, there are fewer than 7,000 painted dogs left in Africa. That's roughly 1% of what the former population was, although clearly the macaws are in much more sort of dire straits. And I was very interested to hear from Sam's talk. We've been talking about extinction for 300 years? And we're still talking about it, and probably even more so today. And this is the problem. The threats to the wildlife they're more or less the same. It's habitat. It's habitat loss. It's management of habitat. It's human population expansion that encroaches on habitat, the farming issues. They're kind of the same, no matter what the species. It's the same challenges, the same threats. And there is a real possibility of many of these species becoming extinct in our lifetime. So, maybe I should move on from that picture. What we're trying to do at Painted Dog Conservation is mitigate that. And you are part of that problem. Like Sam said as well, you're part of the problem, but very much part of the solution. And I don't know how many of you were at Jane Goodall's talk last night, but she talked really passionately and emotionally, as usual, but about what you can do right here and now in your own backyard and the difference that can make collectively on a global scale. So this is what we need, and we need you to be part of our journey. We need you to be part of our story and be part of the solution to these things. We spend a lot of our time at Painted Dog Conservation dispelling some of the myths, some of the old stories, if you like, and particularly one of the things that the painted dogs have suffered from over the years is this kind of impression that they're a wanton killer. They'll go out there, they'll kind of kill everything in their path, they'll devour a whole herd of antelope. And it's just simply not true. This is a not unfamiliar scenario. The dogs are resting, the impala, has this got a pointer on it somewhere? That one. The impala in the background here are very much on the menu for the dogs, but you can see there's not a single impala with its head up looking. The water buck at the front here is very rarely predated on by the dogs, and you can see how interested the dogs are in what's going on around them. They are not related to domestic dogs. A lot of their behavior, I guess just a lot of their behavior will remind you of our favorite pet at home, but they are not a close relative. I think Jane talked last night about what the percentage sort of genetic difference between humans and chimpanzees, and it's like, what is it, 1% or something like that? It's very, very minimal. Painted dogs and domestic dogs, it's a little bit more. It's 3, 4, 5%. That's like the relationship between humans and baboons. So we cannot breed with baboons. We know people that certainly when they've had a few drinks or something like that, Don would be a very good example of that. You would describe him as being a bit of a baboon, but that's not the same thing. They're not related to hyenas. It astonishes me how often you hear that the hyena. You're like, no, I mean, that's a hyena. Yeah, just in case there's anybody got any doubt. This is a painted dog. This is Tate, who features heavily in the BBC documentary Dynasties and the book that I produced with photographer and my co-author Nick Dyer. They don't even look the same. I don't know how you can even possibly confuse them. Here's a little clip of a den. This is an alpha female that we knew so well, Socks, one of the most successful females in Wangi National Park. Sadly, she passed away, but a lot of her pups, her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren are still thriving in the Wangi ecosystem. It's all about the pups for the dogs. They're highly social, extended family units that care for the young, the sick, the old. A lot of qualities that, frankly, if we emulated, life and the world would probably be a better place. There's my son, Sam. Sam, my other Sam here, talked about our life growing up. And I grew up in the UK. I don't really know why. I would think I was just born with an interest, a passion, a love for wildlife, parents that support that. And through a long, complex journey, I ended up in Zimbabwe, and painted dog conservation became a reality. But very much due to the support from you all here in this room. It seems to be a particular thing when we're in America, we have to do a bit of geography. I don't know why. You have some guy in a White House up there on a hill who has his own terminology for, this is Africa. It's a continent. It's not a country. Zimbabwe's down here, which is where we're based. And within Zimbabwe, most of our work is done here, this Wangi National Park and on the peripheries, but we do a lot of work up in the north here. This is the mid-Zambezi Valley. And the other main dog population is sort of down here in the low veld. But you're talking about 700 dogs, maximum 700 dogs in the whole of Zimbabwe. One of my proudest, I guess one of the things that makes me most proud is the staff and the people at Painted Dog Conservation. You cannot work in conservation without working with people and the local communities. If you ignore the local communities, you are doomed to fail. We have more than 60 staff at Painted Dog Conservation, all from the local villages around us. And we'll take people, I would rather take somebody with the right attitude and nurture that, develop them, train them, and make them experts in their field, rather than bring in, with respect, a highly educated somebody from somewhere. You know, it's better you've got to work with the local people that live cheek by jowl with the population. So this is Jealous. Many of you have met Jealous. He's a Disney conservation hero from very humble backgrounds in villages outside on the edge of Wangi National Park, but he's an absolute expert in what he does, and that's just due entirely to his attitude and commitment. And so many of our staff are being recognized. Maria, the same. Maria used to sell baskets on the side of the road. She's just been at Disney, talking to Disney's interpretive guides about interpretive guiding. Yeah? Disney, Houston Zoo's another, I don't know if there's anybody from Disney in here, but they do a fantastic job. Disney Wildlife Conservation Hero Awards. And they're always looking for people to be nominated. And Maria, Jealous has won it, Maria's won it. This is Belinda, one of our anti-poaching units. Belinda was a kid at our bush camp. She was at our bush camp when she was 11 years old. She's now 20-something, early 20s. again, a recipient of this Disney Wildlife Conservation Hero Award and the Houston Zoo Wildlife Warrior Award. And with that, she went to undertake training at a fellow anti-poaching operation, the all-female Akasingas, which is in Zimbabwe, run by the International Anti-Poaching Foundation. Lepheus here, he's been with us for more than 2001. What's the maths on that? 18 years. He's patrolled probably over 20,000 kilometers on foot picking up snares, and he's just been awarded the Paradise Foundation Ranger Award for recognition for his work. So this is what's really important. This is conservation in action. You work, these are all local people that we've got involved, we've employed, trained them up to become experts in their field. And David, is David in here? Where are you? Stand up. That's enough. So David should be stood here, not me, because everything that happens at PDC is his fault. And I do not know what I would do without David. He's taken on so much responsibility for running day-to-day operations at PDC that it's incredible. And just my hat goes off to the guy. He's a fantastic guy and sets a tremendous example for the rest of our staff. Again, local lad, grew up in Wangi. He used to look after Jealous. When Jealous was... other way around. Jealous used to look after you, isn't it? Of course, he's older. So Jealous used to look after David when David was a kid growing up in Wangi. And then David went off, traveled around Africa, his father was a ranger with the national parks, so they moved a lot around Zimbabwe. He got educated in South Africa, and he's been with us for several years now. And as I say, he runs Painted Dog Conservation. We talked earlier, Sam talked about habitat loss, I talked about habitat loss and the threats. One of the biggest threats and challenges that the painted dogs face is from poaching, illegal hunting activities, and it's a simple thing to mitigate. It's boots on the ground, and so many of you here support that. Kathleen was one of the first people to step up and support our anti-poaching operations. And she asked me, well, this was 20 years ago or something, maybe not quite. And she's like, do you employ anti-poaching units? I said, no, you do. Because you pay for it. You give us the money, the support that we need to put these guys on the ground. And it makes a huge difference. The problem is there's just not enough people doing it. We can protect this area with boots on the ground. But if our neighbors are doing nothing, it completely undermines what we're doing over here. And when that's happening on all sides, you end up with a year like we've had this year, where we've just dealt with so many issues like this. You know, this is telephone wire, copper telephone wire that the poles, like you have problems here, isn't it? Nobody's got power or something. It's like being in Zimbabwe. And it's the same there. You know, the infrastructure's falling down or people cut it down, they use the wire. It's driven by hunger, but it's an illegal commercial activity. And we had a recent situation, one of the dogs that we have known and nurtured and protected and looked after for years, Fran, 7 years old. I don't know how many of you get my newsletter, which I just give a shout out to Sherry Paul there, who turns all my dribble and nonsense into something that people enjoy to read. So, but Fran, 7 years old, she's been snared 5 times in her life. That 5th snare killed her. And we arrested the poacher. The dogs tracked the poacher down, and we arrested the poacher. And he basically got let off by the magistrate, because the magistrate's saying, taking pity with it. Oh, well, he's got a job, but he's not been paid, and, you know, feeling sorry for him and everything. And I'm like, If the same guy broke into your house and stole your TV and sold it, giving the same reasons, would you let him off? And she's like, no. I said, well, why? So we've appealed the case, and we've engaged some activist, sort of a lawyer, sort of, what do you call them, activist group, and we're trying to appeal the case, because it's just, at the moment, it's just not taken seriously. Elephant poaching, pangolin, rhino, it's taken very seriously in Zimbabwe. There's very robust laws, and no guys, their feet don't hit the ground when they're in jail. But this kind of poaching still isn't taken seriously enough, and it's a big challenge that we face. But it's not all been bad this year. Again, if you read my newsletter, you'll be familiar with the Mpindo pack, which was a pack of dogs that we knew the alpha female, Snowtail. We didn't know her mate, Jonathan, and they'd den deep inside communal land, and they were predating on goats. We captured them. This is last year. We brought them to our rehab facility, nurtured them. They grew up there. We released them. 2 months later, they were back in the same place. And we're like, okay. So then we had to recapture them. We engaged David and the team. Were down there a lot, engaging with the communities, getting them to at least tolerate the dog's presence to the point where it was the opportune moment to capture them safely. So that happened again earlier this year, and then we reached a point, but now we had to find a new home for them. So the old guys went to work. Thanks, Sam, for that reference. This is something we've done. This is inside our rehab facility, which we've got very large enclosures, and it's the safest way to sort of capture and now move the dogs. We hang up these nets. We're just going to run them into the nets. You grab them by hand. It's a lot of fun. You've still got all our fingers. We had a whole team. As it happened, we had a whole team of vets down there because we run a domestic dog vaccination program where we just vaccinated more than 1,500 domestic dogs against rabies and distemper. Which is a huge threat to not only the dogs but the whole wildlife. And as I speak now, we got messages this morning from Shivani in the Waso Lion Project out there in Kenya, and they've got an outbreak of distemper there that's killing the painted dogs up there. So we had more vets than you could throw rocks at. So it all went like really smoothly. Processed the dogs through in crates. And again, what I love about all these things, this is Primrose from the office, Maria. It's like everybody gets involved in these operations, and willingly and enthusiastically. We worked with wilderness safaris. I don't know if there's wilderness are here. They're often here. There we go. Absolutely one of the best safari organizations, bar none. And they were tremendously. We needed to find a new home for these dogs far away from communities. And we sort of identified, through our work in Mana Pools area, we identified Mana Pools up there, and wilderness got behind us like that. To build the boma, put in all we needed help. It's a long way from where our main operations, and we needed support, the infrastructure support that wilderness have in place. We flew the dogs up on their plane. They took all the seats out. I really don't know what the people who've traveled in that plane afterwards thought. Because as much as I love the dogs, they do smell terrible. So, but we flew them all up to straight. So I got them to Mana Pools and then released them. And it was so smooth and fairly effortless. Needed a bit of encouragement to come out. Little tap on the nose. Out goes one. They're all just sat inside, and you're like, come on. This guy cracks me up. This is the pilot. And he's like, got his own selfie thing going on. Another one out. The pups are in there somewhere. So this is real. This is like this is conservation in action. This is what this is our day job. There was a few very excited clients at the camp. There's some of the pups coming out. I had to give them a little nudge. I think there's one more to go somewhere. Or maybe there's more pups. Yeah, there's more pups. Pilot's still got his selfie going. There go the pups. Still one more. This is Dad, the last one to come out. To give him a little nudge. Mind your fingers. And there you go, they're out. And it was just... These are good days. And without wilderness support, we'd have been lost. So they're just really big thanks and a shout out to Wilderness for their support. It's brilliant. So they settled in nicely into their new enclosure. It's a big enclosure. It's bigger than this room. Very thick vegetation, some high points. And we're going to hold them there, and Wilderness are going to feed them until probably April next year. And the idea there is that what you're trying to do, if we took them to mana pools and just released them, they would try to immediately go back. They have, I don't know how homing pigeons work, but it's all the same kind of thing. Somehow they know where they are and they know where home is, and they're going to try and get there. Well, they're not. You saw that map at the beginning. They're not going to make it from mana pools right in the north all the way down through back to Wangi. So the idea is that the longer you keep them where you hope they'll stay, the more likely they are to stay there. So we're going to hold them in the enclosure here until sort of April next year, and then release them happily into the wild. And meanwhile, life goes on back in Wangi. Our education work, we've had again close to 1,000 children again this year coming through our bush camp program, working with Wendy and the artisans, making the crafts, some of which you can buy outside there. And this is again, it's engaging with communities. It's bringing local people into conservation, benefiting from conservation in as many ways as possible. So that they're part of it. They're no longer part of the problem, they're part of the solution. And that's what you're aiming for all the time. Simple things like provision of water is a life-changing thing. And that's what we've recognized over the years, dealing with the individual, dealing with one individual one day at a time, and the difference that it makes over time. Again, much the same message as Jane was delivering last night. It's like, what can you do right here, right now? And collectively, that makes a difference. And that's what kind of keeps us going. That's what keeps us sane when you're on the front line of conservation. This is the vaccination program I referred to this year. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create an environment where the painted dogs can thrive. And you're part of that. We need your support. We need your help to do that. Send cash, checks, credit cards, anything, whatever. There's so many ways to become involved, whether it is purely the money. We've got Don here helping us develop drones to track the dogs to make us more efficient in the field. Pee-wee supplies us with fishing lures and stuff so that in our spare time we don't go too crazy. David's a very keen fisherman. No, but whatever it takes, but you're part, I'm joking there, but whatever it takes, is you are part of the solution. And it's just a real privilege to be here and meet you all again, some new faces, some very old familiar friends at the front. And if you want to buy a book which tells the story of these dogs that the BBC filmed, and the story, my story, and the work that we do at Painted Dog Conservation, as I said, to create an environment where this incredible species can thrive. And if this species is doing well, a lot of other species are doing well. And again, what Sam referred to the same, it's habitat. If you're protecting that habitat, if you're using the dogs as the vehicle to protect that habitat, a lot of other species are doing well at the same time. So thank you. I've run out of time. I've run over time, but who cares? Thanks very much.